This is going to be a video that's an extension of the last post I did that showed you a pattern that I use to create modal dialogues. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to extend that pattern from modal dialogues to put a form inside of the modal dialogue, and then to make it even more interesting, we're going to create a form that has a list of items inside of the form. So I'm going to show you what we're going to build first, and then we're going to transition into building it. A heads up on the code. As we're walking through the code for the remainder of the video, my voiceover got jacked up, so I had to go back through and redo all the voice on top. So that's why the typing sometimes is not going to be in sync with what's going on. But hopefully you enjoy it. So let's get to what the demo is. So what I'm doing here is I'm just showing the response that I get from the modal, and here we click the modal. And as you can see, when we click the modal, I can enter a name of an item, like item name, and then there's the idea of there's a high level objective, and then I can create subtasks. So my subtask 1, subtask 2, subtask 3. And this is all being handled by React Hook Form. I can remove the items. I can add the items. I can add more items. Let's put 3 back. So now we have the tasks, and then the cool thing is that when it's all saved, I get this nice data object back that has the tasks broken out with individual IDs. I have a name, and it's all kind of being managed nice and neatly using React Hook Form. This is pretty awesome stuff, so hopefully you'll stay by for the rest of the video and see what I got going on. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and leave comments below if there's more interesting things you'd like to you'd like me to show you. So hopefully you enjoy it. Check out the video, and let's get to the code. Alright, let's get to the live coding. So we're going to use my favorite tool, React Hook Form, for creating forms. The idea is to modify this modal app that I showed in my previous demo to use the use array field. So the idea is we want to be able to show a primary task that has subtasks. So let's first start off, we'll just copy over the existing sample that they provided for us. Let's switch it over to our favorite TypeScript since the sample's not in TypeScript. We're going to create a separate component called task list that will manage the form array. So let's just continue to go through and change everything over to tasks, because that's going to kind of be what we are manipulating here. So basically the idea is that with React Hook Form, you have this kind of use field array, and the fields are managed by React Hook Form, and it gives you the ability to add them, remove them, replace them. Right now we're just focusing on adding them, and then later on in the video we'll show you how to actually remove them. So let's start now by installing React Hook Form to get the library in place. Like I said, we just copied over the original code. We kind of renamed some fields to get it going, and now we're off to the races. Alright, so we got it installed. Let's see if we can now clean up some of our errors because the library wasn't loaded. So let's import the library at the top here. We'll get the library imported, then we'll use Visual Studio Code's ability to kind of add all missing imports. That cleaned up a bunch of stuff. Alright, we'll switch these things over to Ionic components later, but let's just stick with plain old HTML components. We got to put this thing in a React fragment to kind of get rid of that error. Now let's see what else is missing here. That looks right. What else is wrong here? No, that's good. What am I doing wrong? No, I definitely don't want to convert it to a lat. That was a mistake. What is it? What is it? I hate when you get to these kind of bizarre points. Oh, it's the usual missing param or paren matching problem. So let's fix that up. Get rid of the red squigglies are our developer's nightmare. And now my caps are stuck. Okay, that's done. Let's check that's done. Oh, I need another bracket on the end. Bracket paren. That's what's missing. Come on. Yes, please. All right, there we go. Now we have it set up inside a fragment. Let's put a title on top, so you'll know that these are like all the tasks. So that's the list of tasks that we're iterating through this fields map that React Hook Form creates for us. So now we want to be able to add items to our task list. So we'll just copy over the basic input field. Well, let's go through and start to rename things appropriately. So with reactive form, you have to have a specific name for your variables that you're adding to the data structure that they're going to return to us. We'll just call this task input. Seems pretty intuitive. It's a task input. And then, of course, you have to put it in a form to get all the value, excuse me, to get the power of reactive form. So let's wrap the whole thing in a form. We add the handle submit to the top for the use form. And I think that should be good to go because, no, let's add our component that we just created to the original modal and get it to render. Everything looked good. Let's fire up the server. Here we go. We have our form. Let's see if I don't have a way to add it. So I need to add a button. Oh, let's clean up some naming here first. So that at least makes sense. I'll use a big word here. Objective name. So that's kind of the high-level name of the task. And then now let me clean up some Ionic styling. It has everything shoved into one item, so it's kind of splitting it into columns. Let's separate that out. And let's try and run this again. Okay, now we have them set. Oh, they're still split. What's wrong? What's wrong? Oh, I don't have my ion items bracketed. Not bracketed, but ended properly for the elements in the proper hierarchy. Let's see what we get now. Recompile. Input's right. That's right. Right, there we go. Now we have the objective name at the top, we have the all tasks, then we have the add tasks. Right, so the way you get all this stuff to work is you got to submit it. So I need to add a button that will be of type submit, which will trigger a reactive form to do all the magic stuff that it's supposed to do. So let's create that form. We'll start the process of adding some lovely Ionic components. So we'll click the add task to objective. That seems a little long, but hey, why not? So let's put it in there. Task 1, it's not going. Why is it not adding? Okay, I have my submit, which I'm supposed to, oh. No, I don't need that. That's not, oh, yes. Even if I submit, I need to actually call the append method on a hook form to get it to append the data that I want to the fields or to the array of objects that I have created. So I need to call the append method, and the append method takes a map, which is a key value pair. It is the actual value that I want to pass in with the key that it's associated with. And so my arrays are called tasks. And as you can see on line 86, it's looking for an item associated with the task at a specific index. We're going to use the reactive form get value. Let's add that. So with get values, I can pass it a specific key, and it will return the key associated with that. So I say get value, the values, I pass it in the name of the key that I want. I want the key from my input form, which is right there on line 92. So I just say get values from task input, and that should return whatever value has been entered into the input field, which is what I want associated with my form array. So let's once again go through the headache of the parentheses and the brackets and all this foolishness to get rid of everyone's worst nightmare, the squiggly lines. And once again, we are good to go. That's cleaned up. But what I realized is, you see that where it says make sure you set up default value, I need to make sure I pass the default value in. So now I got the value. Let's rename this. It shouldn't be called field. Let's call it task, so that's intuitive. We set it to task. We get our default value set. Let's try and run this guy again. Please. Let's put a value in. Let's make it something nice. Oh, there we go. We are getting our values added to our array, which is exactly what we were trying to get. So, first part done. Not the best looking solution, but it gives us the ability to add items to a field array. And as you can look and see at the data, we get this nice data structure with the items properly structured into an array as part of my form, which is what we were looking for. You can do this yourself. Roll your own code. It's a pain in the ass. It's great that they incorporated it directly in. Now let's clean it up and make one form for all of the input fields. So as you know, the objective name is kind of sitting up top in that other component. We're going to pull it down into our form, and we're going to convert it to also use a controlled component from reactive forms. We're going to convert it to use an Ionic item so that we get the nice style that we want. And all it's going to be left in our primary modal is it's just going to use my task list component that I created. So let's go down into my task list component and let's add the what was previously called objective tasks. Objective name, let's add it to the form also. Because what we wanted to do was we want all the data incorporated into the response that we get back from reactive form. So now we'll have the name of the objective and the array of items or array of tasks that are associated with the objective, all packaged up nice and neatly into that object that reactive form returns to us. So as you can see, we're creating another our Save It All button. So the Save It All button means I got all my data, send it back to the parent. So that's different than the submit, right? So we need an add. No, the Save It All is a submit, which is separate from the add to task, right? So we have the objective name at the top. Let's add some sample tasks. You can see the two buttons. The add to objective is updating the array object, but it's not submitting it. So that's what we want. So we're opening the fridge. We're removing the beer. We have the optional, which is to get a glass. We're not going to get a glass. I'm being a little foolish here. So let's start to drink. So now we've created the array. And then now when I submit the form, you can see the data. Well, that's not all the data because I haven't submitted the form. But when I submit the form, you should see the task array and the title of the object all included in the object. So let's hit the Save It All and see what we're getting. So with the Save It All, we get the title. But if you notice, we're getting this task input value in there. We do not want the task input value. That's like a temporary value that we're just using in the modal. So what we're going to do is we're going to break out this handle submit method that right now is just done inline, and we're going to create our own method. And what we're going to do in that method is basically clean up the data. So as you can see, I get my return data, and I remove the task input field because that's a temporary field that I don't want to get sent back to the parent component. Right? I only want the data sent back to the parent component that's associated with the objective and the subtasks. So now when I run it again, you see I get the task title, I get all the tasks, but I don't get the task input field, which is what we want. We only want the good stuff going back. So we've got that going. Now, what else do we got? Let's see. Let's clean up some of these names so that they make better sense than they did before. Okay, we got this subtask. Where we're going to... Not a good name yet. That seems like a good name. So now we need to change the name up there so that we get the right name back from the object. That looks good. Let's test it to see if we're getting our values and if our object looks right. Yeah, we get task title, subtasks. We didn't get it over. What did I do? Oh, I need to change the default value. Okay, now let's try again and see what we get. How does that look? That's looking good. Everything seems to be doing what we expected it to do at this point. So now let's move on to the next section here. Okay, let's get back to this. So what we want to do is we want to kind of be a good React developer, and we are going to just basically pass properties in one specifically to handle the onComplete method. So when the user properly clicks, save all data, or if they cancel, if they save all data, we want to pass the data back that's entered in the form. If they cancel, we want to pass back a null. So the idea is that we want to move the business logic out of the task list component. And the task list component, really, its sole purpose in life is just to get data and give it back. It doesn't do anything else with the data. So we're going to add a new property on my task list component. I'm being lazy right now. I'm just defining all of my parameters as any. And we're going to take this kind of onComplete functionality, and we're going to move it down into the task list. So the idea is that the task list will pass back any data if it got data, and if the cancel button was clicked, it will pass cancel back, and then that's this information that we will pass up to the top, so the user of the component knows whether or not they need to do anything with the data that they received. So what we do is we're creating a new button. So we have our save it all, which calls the submit, which does the React hook form processing. And then we have a cancel, which is going to do nothing more than call the onComplete method, pass cancel back as true, so that the parent knows, ignore this, they don't want to do anything with the data. So we're calling onComplete, null for the data, and cancel to set true. And then what we're going to do is inside of our doSubmit method, which is called, after everything's fine, we're going to call the onComplete. We're going to set the return data, which is the data that we want to go back up, and we're going to set canceled as false. So now this function is kind of self-contained. It just, like I said, it just gets the input data and it passes it back up to the parent, and the parent can choose to do whatever it wants to do with it. So let's clean this up a bit. I have this whole initial data thing from my previous example. We don't really need that. I don't want to go through refactor it right now, so I'm just going to make I think I'm just going to make this guy optional. Yeah, I'll just make it an optional component, so that should get us through this. Okay. So now I add my objective name. Let's add some tasks. I save, and you can see the data that comes back, just the stuff you want. And on cancel, you get nothing back. So I think we're heading in the right direction with this form, and it's looking like it's doing what it's supposed to do. So let's try again with a few more items. You can add the items, save, and you get the items back. What's troubling to me is that I probably want to have some sort of unique identifier associated with the elements in the array, but we'll circle back around to that later maybe. Let's just clean it up and get these unused components out. And everything's looking good so far for it's doing exactly what we wanted it to do. But let's clean this up because this form looks kind of yanky. So let's start to use the proper. I think we're going to have to make our jump to Ionic right now to start to use the proper Ionic components and wrap them appropriately to work with hook form. But like I said, let's clean the UI. We removed those original buttons because they didn't make much sense there. We're switching them over to the Ion buttons to make it look a little bit cleaner. So now we have our two Ionic buttons at the bottom there, not the plain ones. So we got our save it all, our cancel. They probably should be outside of the item. So let's clean that up a bit. All right, now they're outside of the item. But we probably want to make sure it's danger. You hit cancel means you're losing everything. So we've done that. Looks a little bit better. Now let's see, what do we want to do next? Yeah, let's kind of clean this up a bit to separate out the adding task from the list of tasks. And let's just go with an Ionic card. So the Ionic card is kind of the parent element, that inside of that it has a header, then it has content and a bunch of other stuff. We're going to keep this simple. We're just going to add the Ionic card to be the wrapping component, and then we're going to set the Ionic content is where we're going to put the input form and the button. Let's add a header so we get some sort of a professional look inside of our input card. Remove these paragraph tags. Switch this back to the Ionic item so we get the nice formatting that we want. And let's see how it looks. All right, so it's getting there, but we have a couple of issues with the styling and the way that Ionic by default adds all that padding to the front of the items. So let's first of all get rid of the lines at the bottom, and then let's add the padding appropriately to each one of the items. So these Ion input items have this padding that's added by default to the front of everything. So we're going to have to make sure we get that out of there. But first of all, let's switch this. Let's switch over to these control components. So we basically want our input to be an Ionic component. And so to be an Ionic component, the way they're managed in React hook form is you have to use this kind of controller interface. You should take a look at, I have a couple of videos and blogs on using Ionic with React hook form and how to use and how the Ionic controls are managed properly. So that'll give you more detail here. I'm just going to quickly just get this working. Like I said, look at the older videos if you want more information to understand it. But we're going to follow the Ionic pattern of you have the Ion item, you have a label, and then you have the input. And so that's the model that we're, that's the pattern that we're looking to go with here, so you get a nice clean interface that those of you who worked with Ionic are familiar with. So you see that's what you got here. I have my subtask as my label, then I have my input form, and then we're good to go. But for some reason, once again, I'm losing my data, and I think it is because that H3 looks too bizarre. I think it is because I am not using the appropriate way to pass data in. Yeah, I apologize. The first piece of code I added was how you used to do it. This new code that I have now, where you're using a render method, is the appropriate way to do it. I've popped out in the video and cut and pasted it from a previous project, so that's why there's a little stutter. So as you can see, you have this controller component, and then you have a render method, and in the render method is where you have the Ion item. And so you can see now we're starting to get the results that we wanted. So now let's use the exact same. Well, first let's test it and make sure everything is working properly. So we have our item, we have our input. Now let's copy it and then use the exact same approach to style and get our task title rendered properly. So we're going to, once again, the pattern of Ion item, Ion label, controlled input, wrapped, change, and appropriately set the item name. So that looks like we did that quickly, and then now let's do our final optimizations and cleanup. So as I was talking about earlier, let's fix some of these padding issues. So these Ion items, they have this like 16 pixel padding that comes by default in every item, and it gets, to me, it's kind of crazy. So I always just go in and strip it out with this this hyphen padding start, which kind of lines everything up along the edges a little bit better. So I'm going to cut and paste that on all of my Ion items. Kind of pull that in a little bit better. We still want no lines there. Yeah, that's a bad paste, but let's clean that up a bit. Let's run it, see what we get now. All right, so you get the edges are lined up a little bit better. I like that look. So that's what we have there. So now next, we got one more. We have one more set of HTML elements that we need to kind of clean up a bit here. So this is kind of when we iterate through the fields. We want to render the items that exist in the field array a little bit better. Let's try it with an Ionic card first to see what that looks like. Yeah, I'm not feeling that at all. So what are we gonna do? First, let's change the original HTML element to use the Ionic element. Let's start there first, and then we'll worry about whether or not we like the card. So we drop it in because all these input fields. Let's change the name and get the key and bring that over. So we get the appropriate name. Let's make sure we get the default value because we were burned by that before. And let's see, do we get it added? All right. Oh, we are missing something. What is wrong? Oh, we need to get the value from the render item to appropriately set. Bart, controller is missing. No, it's not the control. It's not the control. We need to get the value item, I believe. Let's try that. Well, first let's fix the task ID problem. All right, but we still have the other one. So I had to kind of take a deeper look at some code, and as it turns out, the problem is I needed to set the default value, which needs to get passed back from the render, and that is what was going on. That default value needed to be added there on that render method to get the Ion input to appropriately update. Apologize for the distraction, but that was the fix. So I think we're off and running again. We are adding our values. but that card looks horrible. So let's remove the card and switch it to an ion item and see how this looks now. Let's make sure we put the padding on the end so we get everything left pushed to the edge. All right. So where our values are being added appropriately, everyone seems to be happy. What are we doing? But the list at the top looks kind of weird because we're pushing the input box down. So let's put the input box below the list and go and see how that looks. So there we go. That looks a little bit better with the list underneath the input box. Okay, what else do we want to do here before we wrap this video up? Because it's getting a little bit long. Let's fix that header because it looks weird with that big font. Let's wrap an item. No, let's do this. We're gonna allow you to be able to delete the task. So the use field array has a method called remove. We'll use that remove method. We will use the Ionic icons. We will add an icon onto the end of the element. When you click it, we will delete the item that's selected. It's done using the index, so let's give that a go. We're setting the index appropriately, and let's see what works. So we need to import the Ionic icons. I say Ionic icons. It's icon. I don't even know how to say it. Ioncons. So we're going to use the trash outline. Icons, we gotta make sure we're using the icons folder to bring those in. I see little red lines on the right side there. What's red? Let's go fix that. Let's use the appropriate. We got the trash outline in there. Let's put our end on our icon element. Let's do the slot ends that shows on the far right side. I realized that we needed the appropriate task ID. So I needed to, let's go down and set the ID appropriately. The catch is that everything needs to be part of the form. So we're going to have to create a hidden field in the form to hold the ID so that it gets passed back appropriately. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to get the date, I'm going to get the time from the date, and I'm going to use that as kind of like a poor man's ID. So we go back to where we actually append the item. When you click the append button, and we're going to add date now, which will give us back a number, which for most purposes should be a unique identifier. And that's what we're going to use. But as you can see, what's going on? Something is not functioning properly. Let's try this again. Let's see if we can fix this bug. So let's add a task, pound table. This is what you do when you fix a bug. You pound table, you Google it, and then you try Stack Overflow. So after you do all that, so let's save that. We're still getting some strange errors, but let's focus on that. So everything's fine, but we're still not getting our ID. And I think we're not getting, actually we're not even getting the ID added. So, this is where the problem was. I had realized that I needed to create this hidden input field to get the ID pulled over. So we take the hidden input field, we take the ID field that's coming back from our items that we're looping through, our task item, and we use that as the ID on this hidden input field. And since it's a registered field of reactive form, it'll get passed back with the array. So let's see if that solves the problem. We restart this guy. Let's add my modal. Fix bug, please, please, please. I said the task. We want to fix the bugs. Once again, we're going to Google it. Then this time we're going to sheet, no pounding the table. We're just going to go straight to Stack Overflow. And then if that doesn't work, we're going to ask a friend. Because we all we want to code with friends. And then we give up. Okay? But, okay, I don't quit, so let's delete the give up. So we see our deletes working now. We see our saves working now, but we're still not getting our ID. Why are we not getting our ID? Why are we not getting our ID? Because we need to set the default value again. We got burned by that earlier. You got to set the default value to get it. Okay, let's try this again. One more time. Fix the bug. Google it. Google it again. Yes, that's what we usually do, because the first Google is usually wrong. Yeah, you can edit those things. When I use this approach, I took the edit out, but you can edit it. But here you get now, you get your IDs, you get your tasks, you get your data object turned back the way you want. And once again, your friend is my friend, React Hook Forma. I highly recommend you use it. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.